And welcome to the Steve Malzberg Show. I'm Bill Tucker. Steve is away on vacation. Earlier today, Donald Trump flew into Texas' Laredo International Airport, where he was greeted by crowds of supporters and members of the press, of course. It was unclear who was happier to see him. Immediately after he landed, Trump took a few moments to answer questions, one of which was regarding the Border Patrol Union and its decision to pull out of all events featuring the Donald. Here's what Trump had to say.
How do you feel about the union, the border union backing out? Right
well, they're petrified, and they're afraid of saying what's happening. And they're the ones that invited me. They wanted to give me an award, and the Border Patrol, they're petrified of saying what's happening because they have a real problem here. And I'm talking about on the whole border. And they invited me, and then all of a sudden they were told, silencio, they want silence.
Joining me now to talk about immigration in the border, Ruben Navarrette, who is a nationally syndicated columnist, Daily Beast columnist, and you can find him on RubenNavarrette.com. And Jeffrey Lord, a contributing editor for the American Spectator, a former aide to Jack Kemp and President Reagan. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us today. Jeffrey, let me start with you. Trump has brought a lot of heat to the issue of immigration, and is anyone surprised that he's rising in the polls as a result of it?
No. I think, once again, the people who are not in favor of Donald Trump are doing all they can to help him. This event in Laredo, where the union, invited the local union, invited him apparently, and then the Nationals pulled the plug on him. One of Donald Trump's themes, of course, is that nobody wants to talk about the issue, and it's a huge issue. And then, of course, when he had that press conference with family members who had been, who'd lost loved ones who were killed by illegals, Jamil Shaw Sr. Spoke at the press conference and said his problem until Donald Trump was getting people to listen to him, that nobody wanted to listen on the issue because it involved illegals. And suddenly, here today, that seems to be exactly the case, and this time it's coming from the union here at the top levels.
Ruben, is Donald bringing too much heat to this issue, or would you rather he didn't talk about it at all?
I don't mind that he talks about illegal immigration. I wish he would do it in a way that's more honest, more accurate, more insightful. I think there are other people out there who do that, but he hasn't. Yeah, you're right, a lot more heat than light, and I think that the conversation requires much more maturity than he brings to it. But I will say this, it's not just illegal immigration that keeps people riveted to Donald Trump. They were riveted during the John McCain thing about Vietnam vets and the Hanoi Hilton. They had nothing at all to do with illegal immigration. What keeps people riveted to Donald Trump is very much the style of Donald Trump, the fact that he is a breath of fresh air. Even if you disagree with everything he's saying on any issue, you can't wait for him to open his mouth because he doesn't play the game by the same rules as everybody else. We have been, those of us who have been in this business for a long time, 25 years for me, I am tired of politicians who don't answer the question and who really don't like the guy next to him, but they say, my good friend from South Carolina, right. The gentleman.
Exactly. Right? I couldn't agree with you more on that point.
Laptop tells you. He gives out phone numbers and stuff. He goes after people, goes for the throat. That, I think, more than anything.
Yeah, it's funny. People ask me to explain the rise of Trump, and I tell them exactly that, Ruben. He's a breath of fresh air. He's not a traditional politician, and there's nothing politic about his answers. What's interesting in this case, though, and I've got to ask you about this, because, talk about bringing heat to an issue. The president's not immune to bringing his own heat. And with this whole issue of sanctuary cities now in front of the public and being discussed like it is, he's already come out today and said if the Congress passes any bill in sanctuary cities, he'll veto it because it would cut off funding to those cities. Does he not have a sense of what's going on here? Ruben, I'll go back to you and then get to Jeffrey, but does he just not have a sense of what's going on here?
I've written dozens of columns critical of Barack Obama on immigration because I think he lies about the issue. I think he tries to be something he's not. I think that he uses it to demonize Republicans, and that despite what you hear on the right, he's not in fact opening the border and giving away the whole store. He's deported 2 million people in 6.5 years. All to please organized labor that doesn't want to compete with the illegal immigrants. And so that's what I've said. And so anytime the administration does something, in my mind, they're suspect. Mm-hmm. In this case, the whole notion of sanctuary cities, I go along with the idea, frankly, of denying cities resources if they say they're not going to enforce federal immigration law or allow it to be enforced within their boundaries. My problem is that's not happening. There's a big myth attached to sanctuary cities. The bottom line is this. If ICE or any federal agency, be it the IRS, FBI, or whatever, if they want you, they'll get you. They'll find a way to get you. They can get you. We're getting.
Yeah, but not if the city doesn't call and say, "Look, we've got this really bad person."
They didn't get Francisco Sanchez
because they didn't issue a warrant for Francisco Sanchez. ICE didn't do that.
Well, you know, Jeffrey, let me give Ruben a little bit of props here in that he's right in regards to Obama. The recent figures and reports coming out of the Center for Immigration Studies, of all places, backs him up in that there are fewer people coming into the country illegally now that we can guesstimate as opposed to Bush. Both parties, it seems to me, are really complicit, and I think that that's part of why Trump is just so welcome here.
Absolutely.
Yes, there's two separate things going on here. I think one, in terms of the Republican base, is that they've been enormously frustrated with their leadership on a whole range of issues. Just today, former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum was going after the Republican leadership for refusing to get into this Planned Parenthood issue, and was on one of the networks saying that they're scared to do it. Well, you have that as a separate issue on a whole string of issues, whether it's immigration or repealing Obamacare, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then into that mix now comes Donald Trump, who is exactly as you guys have described him. He is blunt-spoken. He's putting it all out there. And the response, frankly, from the Republican base has been electric to this. I mean, just electric.
Well, it's also it's entertaining because we're looking at GOP eating GOP here. It's kind of cannibalistic in a way.
I can say we saw this in the last go-around in two places. Sarah Palin and Barack Obama were each getting 20,000 people at their rallies. And they were showing up, the establishment figures like Romney and McCain on the Republican side, or Romney on the Republican side, and people like Hillary Clinton, obviously, on the Democratic side. So the big stories used to be Obama and Palin, and now it's Trump. And that is, I think, what the establishment can't understand, because they can't understand why it is that business as usual is just not cutting it anymore.
Let me ask you both a real quick question here, given this conversation about Trump. You know, there is some effort apparently underway to maybe ban Trump from the debates. Is there any way, in either of your opinions, Jeff, we'll go to you first, that they could possibly do that?
You know, I think there was a move to do that. I think by now, even the dimmest of the establishment folks gets the idea that were they to do that, all hell would break loose.
No one would watch. No one would watch. That's it.
Yeah, you're right. Not only would they not watch, but they take it out on the participants.
Yeah, which that would be sort of fun as well. Just before we have to go, because we're beginning to run short on time, there is a very serious conversation that needs to be had about immigration in this country and our immigration policy.
Right.
Gentlemen, are we capable of that, or are we only capable of engaging when you have someone like Trump bringing blunt heat to an issue, or can we sit down and actually have that conversation?
I think we're capable. I mean, and that's been the great frustration here, is that to want to discuss this, and suddenly the allegations come out that, you're a bigot and a racist and all of this kind of thing. I mean, we need to have a response. I mean, the entire country, this is the only country in the world that is 100% populated by the descendants of immigrants.
Right. So let me get Ruben in here really quickly because we're running out of time.
Yeah. I'll say that, interestingly, too, my colleague is right about this. The two men that I admire most on immigration are Jack Kemp and Ronald Reagan, people he worked for, who approached this issue as grown-ups would, and Reagan signed the 86 amnesty, obviously. So I think, you can deal with it, but you have to deal with it honestly and candidly and with common sense, and we're not seeing that.
Yeah, and I agree with you, except that remember when they signed that bill under Reagan, they said, we're giving amnesty, and we hope with the intent of never having to do it again. Gentlemen, that didn't work out, but this conversation was fun. Jeffrey Lord, Ruben Navarrette, thank you very much for being with us. Up next, voted America's Chef of the Year, Sheriff of the Year is Paul Babu of Pinal County, Arizona. Don't go away. I'm Bill Tucker, sitting in for Steve Malzberg.